And I'll just quickly introduce myself, and then we'll sort of get going with people far more interesting than myself. So Matthew Peters, I'm National Innovation Leader here at McCarthy's, and I got to make that title up, and it's sort of fun to always create your own title. But today, this is a really, hopefully, informative and reasonably entertaining and slightly to greatly provocative kind of session. We have fantastic people in the audience. So the ground rules are: you can heckle, you can ask questions. I haven't actually asked this with any of the speakers yet, but no, actually, we have such fantastic people in the room. We'd ask you to just participate and ask questions. Lend some insight from sort of your perspective as well, and if it gets out of hand, then I'll step up and change the rules again. So we're all changing rules on a fairly regular basis, it seems. So why not do it here? So what the format that we have set up is we're going to start with a Darwin talk. If people are familiar with the Darwin talk, the idea is it's not a salesy; it's sort of a provocative, short kind of talk. And we have actually 3 of them set up. One at the beginning. And then we have a panel of incredibly bright and talented sort of folks that I'm going to do my best to sort of moderate and keep up with. End with a couple Darwin talks, and then a chance for people to sort of have questions obviously throughout, but sort of engage in sort of a bunch of discussion afterwards. The Mary from Evolve, who is normally the key MC, logistics, and all things that sort of have to do with sort of great events like this, is sitting in LaGuardia. And so she plans to be here around close. So you may catch her right at the end. She's very excited about that. So with that, and with no further ado, unless there's other questions, I will actually bring up our first sort of Darwin talk. If Mike is around, I'll give Mike a quick intro, and then away we go. So Mike from Foundation Lab. So where do I begin? No. Well, I'll begin just quickly. So, chief strategist at Foundation Lab, which is, as I think many people in the room know, is a design studio for the legal industry, and I think a lot of people in the room have had some level of engagement with you, and so I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, to sort of wow us, amaze us, and maybe sort of a few tears as well. So, without there you go.
All right, is this working or is this not? Yeah. Okay. Good. All right, I don't know whether it's a little far back, but we'll give it a go. All right, so my Darwin talk is entitled Sprinting to Solutions, but it's geared towards the folks in this room trying to come up with a better way for in-house and firm attorneys to work together. So I'll take it away. As was told, my name is Mike. I'm Chief Strategist at Foundation Lab. Just a little background on me. I am a barred attorney, although not a practicing one, so don't come to me for legal advice. Come to all of these people. I'm mostly an entrepreneur, and I teach a class at a university in Boston around innovation. So that's my background. This topic that I'm going to talk about is definitely something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and hopefully some of you have heard of it, and by the end of it might have an interest in it. So I want to talk a little bit about the relationship, as I see it, as an outsider, between in-house counsel / corporate clients and the firms that they work with. It seems like from the outside at a very high level, I'm sure you guys have more experience with this than I do, to be a bit of a chaotic relationship. It looks something like this. Company runs into an issue, reaches out for help, whether that's via RFP or relationships that you already have. Firms come back with budgets and proposals. Is this echoing a little? And eventually you reach some sort of deal with a firm to engage in a project. Law firm asks client for things, client produces things, law firm produces their stuff and then bills them for it. Some sort of arrangement like that. That's about a 10,000, maybe a 100,000 foot view of the process, and then it goes round and round. Maybe there's some project management in there. But within this process, there are a number of issues that you guys are more familiar with than me, that you can start to track down. So on the company side, maybe it starts in the very beginning. You don't understand the pricing that the firm is offering. You don't understand the proposal that they've put in front of you. Once it begins, you wonder, why is this taking so long? This should have been done already. Maybe you're worried about the project management within the matter or within the experience that you're having. And then by the end, it feels like you paid a lot of money for something that you may not know the value that you actually got from it. On the firm side, there's some issues as well, right? The clients don't appreciate the hard work that you're putting in. You sometimes then start blaming it on the client for not producing quickly enough. It starts to take longer than you thought, and all of a sudden you're writing off work that you can't bill for, and it turns out that the matter that you thought was going to be quite profitable for you was not. All these issues are related to the relationship between in-house and firms that they work with. So how do we solve it? I have a really, really underwhelming solution for you because it's not so much a solution but a framework for arriving at solutions in a way that I think you guys can work together to solve some of these problems that you, again, are far more familiar with than I am. So the concept is design sprints. I'm sure you've all heard of design thinking, maybe less so design sprints. Design thinking is a great high-level way to discover new problems and come up with ideas around solutions. Design sprints are geared towards tangible solutions and doing it quickly, as quickly and efficiently as you can. So again, it's just that's really wonky. Anyway, it's just a framework for arriving at a solution and starting with a problem, and it's a great way to do things more collaboratively and actually test those solutions as opposed to just coming up with very broad concepts. So the basic idea is putting together a sprint team. This is a smaller group. You'll see often with like design thinking events, you can have up to 50 people in a room. This is not that. This is a small group of stakeholders who understand this problem and are planning to work together to arrive at a solution. Well, these roles can be construed more broadly. This is the basic idea. You want somebody in the room that understands how to build products. So that's your product chief, if you will. You also need designers and marketers. Designer is somebody that understands either service design or product design, whatever it may be. They're going to be the actual tangible maker of this solution. Marketer is not so much a marketer like how do we sell this thing, but more how do we craft language around this. So if you're building something in a firm, how's that person, or for a firm, how's that person going to craft language to the people that are going to be using it? And probably the most important role is that of the customer rep. So the customer rep is kind of easy for you guys. It's really you, right? It's the person that understands the problem, and that's who these makers on the other side look to for their learning, their understanding. So with that team, the goal is to work through this process. So this process of design sprints is used by Google Ventures. It's used by IDEO. Any design firm has implemented some version of this. This specific one is the one crafted by Google Ventures. It's what they use when some of their portfolio companies are struggling. It's a way for them to work through problems that they're facing. So the first step, map. Again, that's probably a little hard to see, but the idea is to get a high-level understanding of the problem using this mapping to arrive at what are we doing? What are the people that are involved in this doing? We like to use, I don't know if you can see this, but it's a user journey map as opposed to just writing the steps in the process. You're trying to understand, okay, what are the people involved in this thinking? What is difficult about this? How is their experience, positive or negative? And then we love this little section at the bottom called opportunities. It's a way for you to start to identify areas of improvement within each of the steps of this process. And you're trying to do this quickly. We're talking like half a day. We're not saying like, oh, let's do this over a period of a few weeks. This is a half a day's worth of work. Let's get this mapped out and understand it, get everyone on the same page. Once you have an understanding of the process, it's time to jump more to solutions. And at this stage, it's all about ideation. We're not looking for the best ideas. We're looking for as many ideas as possible. There are no bad ideas. So when you think you've, as a team, sketched out as many things you can come up with, keep moving. Come up with as many as you can. And again, half a day. We're not talking about weeks here to come up with solutions. Once you have solutions on the table, it's all about deciding what to pursue. The goal of this is not to come up with a bunch of different ideas. The goal is to pursue one and test it and actually validate whether what you've crafted made sense. Just because the 5 to 7 of you in a room think that this is a brilliant solution doesn't mean it's actually going to work. So you have to actually prototype and test. And this is, it may seem like the bulk of the work, but this is really just the result of all of that work that we just talked about, process mapping, coming up with an understanding of the problem and a solution. This solution is meant to be quick and dirty, get something out there and learn from it. So you can do things if it's a product like putting together actual screens and putting them in a clickable prototype, or if it's something a little broader like a service, you can put together a pamphlet, something that allows you to explain this to somebody and get feedback from them that's more valuable than you just saying, hey, here's my idea. You're actually putting something tangible in their hands and learning through observation whether you've crafted something of value. So once you have your prototype, your final step is to go out and test it. Again, we're using validation from the outside to decide whether what we've crafted is real, whether it solves the problem, as opposed to using our internal thoughts and ideas to say, hey, let's push forward with this and waste time. Your goal is to learn as quickly as possible whether an idea is valid, or in some cases it's even more liberating to find out that it's not. Build it, get it out there, hear from people, and learn that nobody wants this. All right, back to the drawing board. Instead of wasting months building something, you've wasted 3 days, but instead it's not really wasted time because you've learned from it and it's time to move on to the next thing. So I encourage you folks to employ this process to solve problems more quickly. Instead of getting stuck in this stalemate of we have so many different things to tackle, you can use this and you don't even need to hire anybody to do it. You can do it amongst yourselves. You just need to put together these sprint teams. So to give you an example, whatever company, so you're the client of a firm, you're a firm. Work with that group of people around this problem and get folks to buy in and take part in this exercise. So from a design side, you guys probably have designers, people that you have in-house that could work on this and help you guys through this framework. Product chief, make that somebody that understands product but also understands the problem. And then marketer, again, it's all about language. You guys understand how to sell things internally. You do it all the time, right? Any initiative that you're interested in. It doesn't take hiring a marketing firm to do this. In fact, don't hire a marketing firm to do this. Do this with your people that understand the problem and are able to craft language around it so that when you go to these potential users, you're able to articulate what it is you've crafted and learn whether it's of value. And then the one piece that you guys have more so than any other, say, IDEO or Google Ventures or any of these outside consultants that will come in and tell you that they can do this for you for a very large price tag, is you guys have understanding, you have knowledge. So you are the customer rep in this scenario, and you guys are the best person or the best group of people to work through this framework and solve your problems. So that's it. Thank you.
One question quick for Mike. Anybody have a quick question before we head on? And what? We're changing all the rules. And while we get one question, if the panel wants to come up for the next stage, we'll get sort of set up. This is my sort of transition, sneaky transition. See, is it? So question back there.
Can anybody else want? I love that idea, and actually a lawyer was asking me about this. They wanted to do their kind of startup. How many users do you usually have? Because like Google has this like 5-day sprint, but lining up users is like if I want to get like 5 people from possibility aren't on one day, that's impossible. So how do you deal with like people with different schedules? Like really for the like last time we did it took a month, and like how many users do you think to get a good overview, if your product
Users meaning people that will validate this, or
people that will
participate in the process?
Like how many user testers do you have, and like how do you get them to come in? Like that's our biggest problem.
The distinction is really there is a distinction to be made between the user testers and the people that are participating on the sprint team. So the sprint team's hard, right? Because you're asking people to commit to, and you can shrink that. You can shrink it into a couple days. That one is 5 days technically, but you can shrink that down because obviously there are time commitments that people have, especially billable attorneys. I don't know if their firms are too happy to see them spend 5 days of working on something like this. On the user tester side, people that you're actually going to go to with your solution and learn from, it doesn't take more than, I don't know, usually after 8 to 10 you start to see diminishing returns on the information that you're gathering from them. But those people should be invested in this problem to the point where they want to give feedback. Otherwise, you probably want to find a new problem to tackle, if that makes sense. But getting schedules to work through something like this, or getting people to flex their schedules to work through something like this, is a tremendous challenge. But if you're into solving problems quickly, it might be worth it.
Good. Great. No, thank you very much. Appreciate that. So let me, with a very quick transition, set up the panel. And so the panel that the purpose of the panel is to talk about sort of tech savvy, in-house that's the broad sort of umbrella, and we've carefully scripted the questions, and you're going to be sort of amazed at sort of the seamlessness that we move from one to the other.
The
so
drama is going to slowly unfold.
Exactly. This is like exciting. So let me introduce. Fernando, first of all, really, really privileged to have Fernando here, General Counsel for Nissan Canada. And I think as most people here, certainly in Toronto and in Canada, know, Fernando's played a lead role from a diversity perspective, also passionate about sort of integrating sort of the changing profession, technology, and obviously diversity and inclusion, and just seeing how we can sort of mash those together and produce something different. So thank you, Fernando. Looking forward to sort of some of your thoughts. And then Bernadette. So Bernadette has kindly sort of come up and from the States, and there's a small little company that Bernadette was the founding employee of called Serengeti, and which almost all of us, certainly on the law firm side, are very well familiar with. And I'm not sure whether we all like you or not, but that's a different debate. No, but it's, if you think about it, sort of being a thought leader from becoming a data-driven sort of approach early on. So Bernadette's been one of the founders of sort of thinking how we bring data to this very antiquated profession, which has largely been chiseling things out of stone and doing not much else on the data collection side. And so Bernadette's now with Thomson Reuters, and she actually brings a very interesting perspective, having practiced first out in Seattle, and then founding employee of sort of Serengeti and sort of that sort of journey, and then now sort of inside Thomson Reuters, which is like the biggest data organization practically on the planet. So looking forward to that. And then on my far left, your far right, Ian, who is here from Collective. Now, Ian, I guess we start with your most notable kind of important sort of role, which is, I'm told, sort of rumor has at least, that you are dubbed the Millennial GC. So this is actually a legit title, and actually, but legitimately actually holds this title just from the passion for sort of saying how we take technology, how we think about sort of not only new talent and technology and process, and sort of really think it from the GC side, and sort of currently at sort of Collective, and actually is the legal director there. But we're going to talk more about sort of what you're doing there and what you've done actually in some of your previous roles as well. So without further ado, as I said, sort of jump in with questions if you can sort of actually talk over us. I'm going to kick it off, and I thought, and actually I didn't think, I'm thinking right now. I'll start with you, Fernando, because you're first on my left. Maybe just sort of start off with sort of talking about in the from a GC perspective, as you're sort of seeing this evolving kind of role, you're seeing sort of the both the relationship with law firms, but just in-house, sort of as you're what was the traditional. More traditional sort of role for GCs 10 years ago. How have you seen it evolve, and what are some of the pressures that you're feeling in the context of being a GC?
Sure. I think, sorry, is this working?
Yeah.
I think that really the pressures are many. One of them is obviously the pressure to do more with less. And I think as we progress down this progression, we're finding that we're constantly not only having to deal more with the legal issues and being inundated with more information and more data, but we're also being asked to do more things, the compliance functions, to some extent HR functions, government affairs. These are all things that used to be sort of separate from the legal function and now are slowly becoming part of the GC, the in-house department functions, as well as just taking on more of the business approach and being more of a business advisor to the company. And so as you're wearing more and more hats, you also have to make sure that you're more and more efficient in what you're doing. And that's where we're starting to see technology sort of creep in and say, if there's a part of your function that's very labor intensive, it's a part of your function that's not really adding value to your client, maybe we can find ways of getting that done elsewhere or getting that done through technology faster and more efficiently. So I think that's sort of the nexus that's starting to bring about a lot of this change, in particular now as our technology keeps getting better and better and helps us sort of facilitate how we do our jobs.
Perfect. And, Ian, why don't you jump in? Because I know.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there, and I think you raise a really good challenge, especially when you're in-house and you're reporting to a CFO or maybe a CEO. It's all coming down at the end of the day to how are you performing against your budget. That's what you're doing year after year. So there's that challenge of what technologies do I need to integrate? Where do I outsource? What do I do in-house? What do I do out-house? I'm looking at the design sprint, gentlemen, because there's also a communication problem I think that lawyers have from 3 years of being inundated in maybe like a liberal arts setting or the law school setting where there's a disconnect in how do we actually communicate with all these really bright engineers or people in different departments, and specifically engineers, because tech is what's really driving a lot of the economy now. So how do we do things like borrow, in-house IT resources to maybe build out a contract system, or how do we start to solve some of these problems doing more with less? But how do we actually start a conversation and sort of talk meaningfully about, like, well, how do we actually do a design sprint? So I think it's multifaceted, which makes it an interesting thing to discuss.
Just actually, just staying with you, Ian, for a second. Like, I know, like in your previous role, you actually designed some systems and some processes. Do you want to just give us even folks one or two?
So we built. My prior company was one of the larger IT distributors. I call them the beer distributor of technology. It wasn't a value add. They basically were moving parts, warehousing parts all over the world. It was a $6 billion business, but they had a lot of contracts, and we're talking, tens of thousands of contracts, and people are constantly, asking you for, what are the payment terms, with this vendor, or how do we get out of this? And, you're only one brain or a couple of brains. So, we had to think about, how do we build a system, or do we build a system, or do we buy a system? We ended up looking at it and saying, well, we didn't want to build it. So we went and actually got a license through a company called Apttus, which is built off of Salesforce. And we use Salesforce.com to basically be a data warehouse for all of our contractual data. It was a huge project. We made it was the first time anyone had I had ever attempted something like that. But being someone who had worked with technologists before and had those conversations, I was able, as a younger attorney, to add a lot of value to my department, and ended up being a successful implementation. And, the scope was probably a little too large. I would say definitely, if you're looking to build out a contract system, focus, on the key data sets that you want first, and then build off of that. But yeah, they're a lot of fun, and there are ways that lawyers can exercise different parts of their brain in their practice.
Right.
I think Ian has a really unique I'll call out, it's a unique perspective, right? Because most legal departments probably don't even get the green light to build something or to look at technology, right? I mean, exactly what Fernando said. You are doing more with less, and you're a cost center. So if there are technology dollars, they're not going to a cost center. They're going to go to a revenue generator. So one of the challenges that I see for a tech-savvy GC is not just the choice of all of the technology that's available, because we're actually living in this terrific world where there's a ton of technology that's pointed directly at legal. I think the challenge for legal departments is actually developing the business case for that technology, working with partners, if it's Thomson Reuters or all the entrepreneurs that are here, to demonstrate an ROI on that, and to demonstrate that you would be able to not only implement the technology effectively, but to sustain use for that ROI in years to come. Because I don't think the issue, I look out into the world of technology that's available to the legal profession, and it's outstanding and astounding. But the real challenge is, how do you, as a legal department, actually make the business case? And it's a business case. It's not issue, rule, persuasion that we're all taught in law school. It is charts, numbers, pictures to demonstrate that, and that is a challenge.
And just on that, let's talk a bit about the numbers, because I think we might be the most number devoid, data devoid. Oh, sorry, we have a lot of data, leveraging data sort of devoid industry on the planet. So, Brenda, just playing on that, building the business case, thinking about the data that either particularly in-house, but maybe sort of the external law firms as well that they're sitting on. Just thoughts on sort of what's generating that data, to help build a business case, or just to run your business?
Yeah, I'll use my experience from Serengeti, and obviously, we were working with a technology which was creating a data pool, which easily showed ROI, right? You were able to demonstrate how your outside counsel bills were being decreased. And it's not just I always laugh. I get into rooms with lots of private law firm attorneys, and they're like, "Oh, you're the people that brought Serengeti." But the fact is that that data can be used, if you understand it, can be used to demonstrate how you can actually be more effective and efficient, right? So I challenge you not to think of the data as, verboten and as something that's going to take work away from you. It's actually, if used correctly, a way to bring work to you. And even to talk in this way, I mean, I'll let you guys also say it. If when law firms change the conversation like this, that shows me and it shows your clients that you're being innovative. It shows me that you're trying to step into your shoes. But that ROI can be about reduction in outside counsel fees. It might be about, hey, we learned from the data that we have all of this work going to this type of matter. Maybe it's time to bring someone in. And then the data can show you whether it's smarter to second someone. Is it to create playbooks that can be deployed by technology? Is it bringing in a full-time staffer, corporate counsel? Is it launching some sort of compliance program to diminish that? So your ROI isn't just about reduction of fees, but again, it's how you use that data to create that ultimate goal. If it's cost savings, not just maybe cost savings within my legal budget, whether external or internal, but cost savings or reputational savings for the company because you've identified a harm or liability or exposure that you can then reduce.
Again,
No,
sorry, I mean, those are things that are all very difficult to quantify as well. And so I think that the way you also have to approach it is your business team sees this as an opportunity cost. Every dollar they're spending towards this, it's a dollar they're not spending towards some customer-facing piece of technology as well. I mean, technology is not just developing in the legal realm; it's in many other elements of the relationship with customers and clients and suppliers and everything else. So it's all about being able to demonstrate the opportunity cost and why it's valuable. I mean, one thing that I find interesting is the idea of pilot projects.
Right.
So if you can do something for 3 months, assuming that it allows you to integrate that quickly and use it, train up people that quickly in your department, and again, it depends on the size of your department. If you got 300 lawyers versus 4,
right.
It's a lot easier to train 4 than it is 400. So I think pilot projects still give you that opportunity to say, look, within this period of time that I've been using this tool, this is what I've been able to accomplish. This is what I've been able to do differently. And if there are costs associated with it, this is what I've been able to save in terms of my end goal.
And I think that's a perfect example of a practical, short kind of, and other thoughts like for anybody, that doesn't have to be personal experience, but you may have a friend that you've seen to do something that well or not well, but because I think, like, Bernard, it's true, sitting on all this data, law firms are sitting on it, and obviously they access through some of the tools like Serengeti where, the in-house can have access to a bunch of data, but like, I'm just picturing sort of the, with 4 or 400 sort of, in-house lawyers, you're all stretched to the max, you have no time, you have nobody that actually knows what data analytics means. How have you seen sort of people access this? Running a pilot, I think for now is a great. Other thoughts on sort of how you've seen in-house sort of access the data, use it, leverage it when they're all sort of stretched and sort of stressed out.
At least in the States, I think one of the new trends that we're seeing, I don't know if it's as popular here or as caught on, is that general accounts are in fact hiring not lawyers to do this work, but department operations specialists. Have you heard about right now, like next week, it's CLOC, the Consortium of Legal Operations. I forget what the C's are. Corporate legal. Anyway, operation professionals. So they're not lawyers by training. Some of them are lawyers by training, but what they are incredibly business-minded individuals. Many of them come from finance. Some of them are former technologists. But I think some lawyers and some GCs have realized, like, I did not go to law school to run staff and run numbers, right? This is not my sweet spot. But I have the power to actually, when given the opportunity, to hire someone that can do that for me. So it's not even your traditional chief of staff role. I mean, it's really someone who's directed. So for some legal departments, we see that they're hiring that type of role. And I know that CLOC is starting to be international as well. But what about those departments that don't have a CLOC? And I think that is just one of those things where it's many hats that you wear. Sometimes it's a economic pressure that your CFO is putting on you to demonstrate those cost savings. So you just need to find the time. And I guess the good news is that, right, none of us went to law school because of our math. Well, maybe some of us went to law school because of our math prowess. I did not go to law school because of my math acumen. But to be a successful business person, and that's true if you're in the department or otherwise, you have to step out of your comfort zone and develop those skills. And for many GCs and for many in-house counsel, it is learning to swim and to swim. The good news is, everyone's kind of learning, so everyone's taking baby steps. So it's not about pivot charts, but it is about, I had this huge talk about how, if you want to be able to bring technology in and demonstrate the value of that technology, you need to start talking like the other department leaders about your resources, if that's technology or your people. And the way that they talk about their resources, their staff, is with data, numbers, and pictures.
And I'll just also riff off of that because you brought in kind of the legal education. And, it's 3 years in the U.S., and they don't teach you any of this stuff. They're not teaching you about legal ops or contract management systems. It's not a very sexy topic. It's not something that gets written on about. But it's really an imperative now that if you are going to adequately train somebody to practice in this environment where we're not just seeing this trend in the legal sector, it's healthcare, it's every aspect of, the economy now is being driven more and more by data and by these types of the KPIs, and so to speak. It's really imperative that we start to have these conversations. And you said that there's the legal ops function, which is definitely growing. But I think as someone who's a general counsel or or running a legal department, that's what you are, and those are the people that will be running the departments, because you're not as a GC or as the top of the organization, you're not getting deep in the weeds. You don't need to be a bankruptcy expert or this expert or that expert. Your job is management and seeing, okay, where are we seeing those fat tails? Where am I seeing, looks like, this quarter we did a ton of compliance, a lot of compliance dollars were spent. What's going on in compliance? How do we automate some process there? Who are we paying there, and why are we paying them? And having that data at your fingertips in all those different areas where you practice is what's really going to, make you more valuable to the organization. So I do, I trying to be conscious of where we are. We're at a law firm, and I think, some people view this as threatening, or, well, we don't want to give up the data. We don't want people to be transparent. But I assure you that if you are, able to provide this data and transparency into the process, your client's going to love you. Your client is going to give you more work because it's allowing you to make your job easier, which is justifying the legal budget, on a quarter by quarter basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess just to add a bit, I see quite a few LPP students here, and I see the administrators of the LPP program here, and that's sort of what we're starting to see now. That even law schools are starting to think different. They're starting to create not just the narrow sort of lawyer that knows the law, but more about the one who knows how to apply it, the one who knows how to be able to look at financial data and understand what it means, see the trends, and understand that. And I think as we develop that capability, we don't necessarily need to look for other professions to come in and sort of supplement. You'll still have the experts, don't get me wrong. There are situations where you will need that level of expertise. But I think the key is being comfortable with it, being familiar with it, being curious about it, and being able to not be afraid to implement it in your day-to-day and see what works. Not everything's going to work, but if it does, then all of a sudden those incremental changes are the ones that can result in a good outcome for not only yourself but your clients.
Yeah, and we're seeing certainly those roles at law firms too, like the data analysts, the Lean Six Sigma, the project managers, the technologists. Like, it's an interesting complement that now is sort of being built out, and I think that it's another resource. I think if you're a smaller in-house counsel, to sort of talk to your law firms and kind of say, I think it's an absolutely legitimate sort of question to say, I want you to run the data analytics for us, and actually, why not even pay for it?
Yeah, I'd actually just like to pose a question to the audience. Like, how many people here are in-house lawyers or work in in-house departments? So how many people here have a map of their legal processes? I'm thinking about like design thinking and what we were saying at Lean Six. How do we design the process and look at it more like as an engineer would? So for the people out there, I guess we had about 20 or so hands, and then for the first question and the second question, about two or three people have actually kind of mapped out the process and are looking at it at that high level and trying to really see where's the value getting added, where's their waste, and what technologies do I
like
use.
You take what you're talking about, sort of saying, invite the law firm in. Great opportunity for the law firm. Great opportunity to get sort of some time where you can sort of say, let's start with something as opposed
build
to
a map.
Yeah.
I think it
Simple
starts
map,
with
right?
building a map of the process and seeing, where does technology fit into this equation?
Right, and process. Like I think, personally, like my view is, like technology. I know that a title is tech savvy and in-house legal, but it's so much about people, so much about process. It's so much. In fact, I always sort of say technology is the last divide to conquer, because it's the people in the process are easier ones to tackle if you don't have a big budget, if you don't have sort of a big IT departments who are supporting you. Start with simple process. Like, do you have a precedent? It's some of those really basic kind of points. So transitioning a little bit. So we have also, I think, a number of sort of early stage legal tech sort of folks in the audience as well. So one of the other, you sort of have this need for the in-house, small or larger in-house groups who are saying, being overwhelmed, I want to do something different. I don't have budget necessarily or the capability. And then you have a great pool, and Toronto really does have a great pool of really talented early to mid to growing, and then of course large providers like Thomson Reuters too. Like, it's a good ecosystem here. Any suggestions or what you've seen is sort of how those other folks that have really good solutions, if they could just somehow get to you, could sort of engage in a different way with the buyers, the in-house group, or anything you've seen that's worked, or a better way for them to sort of connect up with the right people on the in-house side? Trick question.
Everyone's looking at me for some reason. I mean, my take on this is I'm seeing a lot of. And by the way, Toronto is it's a hub, definitely. I've just been here for a couple of days, and I'm coming from New York, and I'm seeing companies here that are really on the forefront. But I think don't be all things to all people. If you're looking to get into this space, or if you're in this space, I think carving out those niche things in the law. There's so many. The law is so esoteric, it's so broad, it covers so many facets of society. There was somebody, I have a problem actually in New York with getting parking tickets. If anyone has ever tried to park in New York City, but now someone has actually developed an app that speeds up the judicial process, where you basically just go onto the app, send the parking ticket, and then you get a notification when it's been dismissed or it's up for review. That's just an example of someone who found something very niche and very painful for a lot of people and made a great solution. You can't be all things to all people, but if you've got an area that you have a quirky interest in, or you've just heard that this is a problem, but it's not, one of the big ones, like, there's a lot out there in sort of contract management and e-discovery and some of those big ones, there's a lot of competition. But if you're, I think if you're in this space, or if you're looking to really make a difference, think small and niche.
Yeah. That's great.
I think you also need to get a few cheerleaders.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Having some, don't be, like you said, everything to everyone. Find a few that are, able to take on your solution, be able to champion it, train it up, improve it, because there's always little things that you can tweak on it. And then when it gets to a larger stage or mainstream, then you can now say, this is my reference. This is someone who's used it, and they can give you sort of their perspective of how it worked, where some of the hiccups were, and how we fix those hiccups.
No, I think that's exactly right. And we're also, I think, fortunate in Toronto. I know Chris is here, like the Legal Innovation Zone at Ryerson has been a great sort of intermediary to sort of help sort of bring people together, which has been, certainly from a law firm perspective. I mean, having somebody who's sort of vetted and checked out and sort of looked at and sort of, it's an easy way for law firms to access. It certainly encourage, if you haven't talked to Chris, is another sort of really, and the team there at Ryerson is a fantastic sort of resource just to understand what to go through and what to do and who you can talk to as well.
I'll add to that. So I think that the challenge, especially when we were building Serengeti, was differentiating between things that they needed to that was nice to have. And again, there's so much great technology there. And so you can do a ton of roadshows and you're going to get like a lot of nodding heads. Yeah, that is really neat. But again, when you're battling for lean dollars, is it a need to have? So again, I really challenge, especially the entrepreneurs in the room, to articulate what that need to have is, because you're not battling, this company against this company. You're battling against the status quo. And man, that status quo is really hard to overcome. But championing it is having champions with a company. I know in our early days, and when I say early days, I mean, I was there in 2002, which makes me startled that I've been in legal technology now for more than a decade. Don't let my youthful appearance distract you. But you know, that was, we had a few champions, and we partnered, and we essentially created a matter management system with a few partners. I mean, we knew with those few partners that we would be able to feed ourselves just with those few partners, and that was good enough. But we also knew with the insights that those few partners and champions gave us, we would be able to build something really terrific. And the thing that was interesting about all of those partners was that they were GCs that were visionary, and they too were dedicated to technology and innovation. And that was often part of their DNA. So if you actually look at a lot of our customers actually come from, in the States, Silicon Valley, because they have this DNA that's, you know, obviously dedicated to technology, but what they're really dedicated to is a culture of efficiency. And those were the partners that really, that were the best partners, that gave us the most insights, that had change management mentality and champions to help implement and, again, maintain those technologies. Because I think that's also the worst part about technology is you may get your in, and what you want to make sure is that you plant your roots deeply there versus, you know, being able to sustain it for, you know, a 6-month period or a short period of time. So finding those champions, I think, is imperative.
If I can add a bit more to that, it's also finding that a little crack in the door that you can then use, you know, put your foot in there and then push it wide open. Now, I'll give you 2 examples. One, oftentimes, this happens very much with subsidiaries. You can't take any kind of solution or any kind of legal technology. It might be the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, it really helps you, but sometimes you can't do it unless your parent company has it.
Right.
And so often you're left waiting to what they do. So sometimes finding the way to that customer, potential customer, is not necessarily through them, but it might be through one of the law firms that they use.
Right.
If you can get the law firm to adopt it and then put it into the bill or put it in somehow into the invoice, you're kind of using it, but you're not necessarily being the primary user of it.
Yeah, getting benefit of it without having
right.
to go. Yeah.
So that might be a way of getting somebody else to get you in the door. The other thing, I'll give you an example. If you have a tool, I know Loom's here, Premonition, there's other options or potential survivors, service providers. But if you, let's say, have a tool for selecting external counsel that looks at AI and analytics and tells you who the best counsel is for a particular tool. One way is to sell it, obviously, to in-house counsel. How do you select your external counsel? Yeah. The other way is, well, go to the law firms. The law firms also develop RFPs or respond to RFPs. They develop their teams to help you with a legal situation. If you can develop and create the strongest team, you're now providing a value added, and when you're responding to the RFPs, you can now give them a stronger option, a good package, something that's tested and true, and you can justify as to why they should go with you versus somebody else. So it's all about how you use the same solution, but you can apply it and use it in many different ways, and targeting different audiences to make sure that you get your foot in the door.
It's a real win-win. I think for the law firm, they can differentiate themselves and not just the regular law firm. They're thinking differently, trying to solve, and at the same time, you're absolutely right. Like a financial intermediary, sometimes, like you said, we've seen this actually a number of times where there's just no way for them to procure it, but they can pay a legal bill, right? So that's another intermediary, a way to sort of get access to it. I think it's a really good thought. So I was just about to rotate into sort of talking about sort of law firms, but I'm going to pause instead of me dominating all the questions. If folks have any questions you want to fire at this fantastic group of people before I dive into talking about sort of next theme. Yeah.
I guess the question is, it could be a big question, but it also could be quite small. And maybe the law firms in the room won't appreciate it very much.
Hopefully small.
I guess the question is, as tech-savvy in-house counsel, if part of the mandate is to manage the dollars and cents that you spend on your legal services, do you see certain services being pulled back in-house given the rise of technology solutions over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's a great question, and I'll just talk quickly. Just last week, we brought in. We're going to bring in a lot of our IP work. We're investing in a platform, Alt Legal. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Alt Legal, but it's a very efficient way to take out a lot of the reporting aspects of IP law. How many IP lawyers do we have in here? So you guys are great. We love you. You protect our technology, but one of the things that tends to irk a guy like me is the little bills for reports. Every little, I just got my IP report here. It's a nice little spreadsheet. That's great. We know how to make spreadsheets. And it's like $100 or 100, depending on those little things add up. And as those types of costs that, we looked at and we said, gee, well, what if we just had a platform that did this for, X number, fixed cost, X number per month, and I can pull the reports whenever I want. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff too. Now we still have IP counsel for, strategic or crafting of claims. There are certain things that we need that expertise. As you said, we're not looking to bring in a whole ton of expertise if we can't afford it, if we don't need it. But that type of work that's, more conducive to a system or, more conducive to reporting or just management. It's not, you don't need, frankly, to be a lawyer to pull an IP report for somebody. What you need a lawyer for is to actually draft really great claims and to defend, in court or to prosecute. So that's just one example. And I use the word kind of form-based, so things that are more form-based or conducive to technology, those will be brought more in-house. And I think IP is one area where you're going to see a little disruption currently and probably, for the foreseeable future.
Maybe just to add to it, because I think it's a really good question, even and your caveat being sort of, well, maybe law firms won't like the answer. But actually, I think law firms should like the answer because, this sort of weird discussion that you'll sometimes hear inside the halls of certain law firms where it's like, well, the in-house group is stealing our work, right? Like that's kind of a really dumb thing to say, and it's really actually a rather illogical thing to say. The buyers are making a rational decision, which is that they can get more value by hiring or building a process in-house than they're seeing from the law firm. So you're not demonstrating value, you're not engaging as a partner. And I go back to sort of Mike, your talk, like, why not instead say we're actually going to go back? Like, and I'm a big believer in the 3 stages. First stage is you have the law firm do it. Second stage is the cheapest, most easy sort of value proposition is to hire, as Bernard, as you're talking about, where the data demonstrates we can do it more cost effectively, have more value inside. And the third stage is a partnership that the law firms can play, where you actually sort of assemble some of the technology, build the process, maybe build it together, as you talked about, Mike, and the law firm at the end of the day should be able to build it and deliver it more cost effective, more value, however you measure value, than in-house even because a lot of departments will do 1 or 2 M&A deals, and that's what however many M&A deals they may be doing in-house. Law firms have 1,000 of them that they're doing. Why can't you leverage that platform to deliver more value in-house? And so the law firms should be I think the best law firms should be actually saying in-house, you should be taking this in-house. It's not like some dirty secret that we're somehow, hopefully they won't figure out that they're spending too much money on us. And once they figure it out, they're going to steal the work from us. It's a different kind of partnership that I think should happen between law firms and in-house. Absolutely.
And I would just say too, just to kind of, then we could get some other perspectives, but, there's no reason why a law firm can't build technology.
Right.
It's kind of amazing to me to see how many law firms that don't offer these types of platforms or APIs or UIs where clients like me can just log in and get information because, there's no reason why a law firm can't hire an engineer or two or use some of the IT resources they have to start prototyping and playing around with different things that they might hit upon something and then who knows, it's maybe the birth of something that could scale.
Or just leverage some great sort of early tech and give them a platform. And like I'm a big believer in buy it first, unless, because the only answer I'd say, a lot of times is law firms are really crappy at building a lot of things. And so, if you can, absolutely build a team and make sure you can deliver on and support it and maintain it. But I'm like, there's so much great legal tech that can sort of very cost effectively with bright minds. I've already built something probably smarter than any law firm could ever. So start there, and then if you can,
we just need to clone you and implement you in all law firms all over the world.
We outsource to other law firms. So other questions? That was a great question. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that one of the challenges with selling the leverage. And the change management that occurs on both sides of that equation to utilize the technology in terms of driving data in, but and getting the data analytics out the other side. But both those people are technical, and they buy in, they understand it. But the biggest challenge, and that question is, you would say yes to this, but the challenge I've had is then getting the business decision makers make smarter decisions by utilizing the outcome of that data. And that change management is really difficult. Yes, no?
Yes.
I'm looking at Bernadette for
No. So, I mean, I think there is, again, there's so many layers of complexity. It's building the data pool. That's a challenge in and itself. The second challenge is slicing and dicing it and analyzing it such that you have insights based on the technology. That's a hurdle in and itself. And then there's the next hurdle, which is, all right, now that I've empowered myself or my legal department with this data, how do I use that to empower my business partners, my internal clients, to also change their behavior? And I guess I don't have good answers for all of those. Oftentimes it's funny because with technology, different partners and stakeholders are at different places in their acceptance and love and acceptance of technology and the data that comes out of it. So you could have a general counsel that is tech forward, but others around him at the table may not be. And vice versa, you may have a CEO or a CFO that is tech advanced, but again, it's the GC that's coming up. So sometimes it's just stars are not aligned. But I will say this, as a practitioner, as a head of a legal department, I would much rather have that data in a way that I've processed, that I've made sense of, in my back pocket to take out when needed, than not to have it at all and to be caught flat-footed. So obviously there's a time that you put in to get to that place of comfort where it's easy to pull out. And the technology, if you're building technology, should be such that it's that it is easy to pull out and it's easy to analyze. And that's not always the case. I mean, I would also say one of our challenges has always been junk in, junk out. And that becomes the roadblock. But I also see some terrific companies mining data, using it in front of their law firms to talk about, that annual letter we get every year about how prices our hourly rates are going up, or to talk about why you're on my preferred panel or why you're being removed off of the preferred panel. It also helps me talk about with my CFO why I'm hiring or going to launch a compliance program, right? So all of those data pieces, being able to show how you move the needle, may not sing to everyone, but man, I'm really fortunate. I'm really glad that I have that data available to me when I need it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tool, and it's a question of how do you use that tool. Right. And I think that's sort of how I see our role, in essence, evolving, because we have that mix of the legal piece, the legal advice, but also business savvy, and being able to translate the results into how it affects our customers, clients, and how we can better utilize that information that comes available. But again, garbage in, garbage out. So you have to make sure you have people buying in. And I think a lot of that will depend on the culture of the organization. Some of them are much more willing to embrace technology and embrace the results of technology. Others are more pen and paper. Different culture. It might not be the solution for everybody, but at the same time, I think it's got a component or a way that you can still implement elements of it. It might not be the whole thing, but you might still have an opportunity to do bits and pieces and then get them comfortable slowly.
I mean, I think the law is just funny when you think about like where people are in technology. I was with a group of it's a global legal department. It was their global meeting of their GCs. I think I told you the story. We went around the table and I just said, name the one technology that has transformed your practice. And of course, some of the younger GCs and AGCs were like, they pulled out their iPhone. They're like, well, I'm tethered to the company, I'm tethered to the job. And another GC was like, oh, I remember when we got PCs. And then the global GC says, man, I remember when we went from triple carbon paper to the IBM Selectra. Right. So that's what's funny to me when, like, even when you think about the tech savvy GC, right? This is the head of this very global, very well-known financial institution, and they are a tech-forward legal department, but not ever, right? The head chief legal officer talking about triple carbon paper as a technology game changer is. I mean,
If you're still
funny.
sending bills on triple carbon paper,
I went home and I called my son who's 7. I'm like, do you know what triple carbon paper is? He was like, no, Mommy. And then went on to Google it on his iPhone.
But see, that's the beauty of it too, right? A lot of people think that legal technology is something new, but it's really been going on for quite a while. It's all about incremental stages of development,
incremental.
things that help us do our job better. Things like even the internet, Google.
I
Things
think
like
it's
that.
so true. Like if I look at sort of like just the tech assemble in this room representing the, fantastic organizations like Thomson Reuters, who have a huge stable of tech, down to like some really neat products across the board, the smaller side. If you could just assemble what you had in this room, you would from a law firm perspective, you would kill all the other law firms probably off, fairly quickly, because you'd be delivering things faster, better, cheaper, more value. I really believe from a law firm perspective, I think this question really is actually, for me at least, at the heart of this question or the topic of tech savvy. The stuff is out there. It's not like it's just basic process improvement. Forget tech for a moment. I think you can get there just with a whole lot of simple, basic kind of things. Then you add tech for to really kind of take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. It's about change management, and it's about sort of the law firms, the in-house groups that are actually able to effectively change their organizations and do that well are going to be the ones that win, and the ones that can't are going to be the ones that lose. I'm a big believer in that. But I don't think we need any more tools. We just need to be able to get some people to actually implement them. Other questions? One more, sir. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
In regards to the e-discovery process, are you seeing any emerging trends with in-house counsel bringing in e-discovery consultants instead of sidestepping and not using the firms as their legal side, bringing in the consultants in-house? Are you seeing any trends like that?
I've heard it. I think that depending on the size of the firm, so I think the smaller to mid-size in-house departments are still pretty much depending upon external counsel. But I mean, obviously, the larger departments, I know that they're definitely stepping into the sphere and doing this stuff themselves to some extent. Because the technology is now making it that much easier to do it. You don't have to have rooms and rooms of boxes and paper anymore and to go and review everything, print things out. The computers are doing that. The tools are becoming available. They're still somewhat expensive. And the economies of scale issue, I think, is an important consideration. But as things get more efficient, less expensive, I think we're going to see it going down from just larger to maybe mid-size, and from mid-size to eventually smaller. So it's a progression, I think.
I think I've seen several Uber legal departments. I mean, for the most part, legal departments are 3 to 5. I mean, maybe 3 to 5, right? I mean, and so anything that has to do with litigation almost immediately gets kicked out to outside counsel, including decisions regarding e-discovery and e-discovery solutions. So I do see some Uber departments that have chief counsel litigation or have discovery counsel, and they would work with the consultants. But again, I think there's still a great reliance, all things litigation, unless you're an Uber department that has a litigation department, to rely on outside counsel for that type of work.
I think it depends also on your company. I mean, we don't get sued that often, right? So for us, it wouldn't make sense. There's other things that we should be investing on that would have a greater return on investment. Yeah. But if you're in a litigation-heavy sort of industry, I mean, that might make some sense. And it would definitely pay dividends faster than it would for someone like myself.
That's a really good point.
There's other things I can be investing on.
So I'm going to ask, actually, I have one more question, and just while I'm asking, I guess, a transition to Noah, if Noah wants to come on up, talking to Kira about, there we go. So if you, and again, these are all, literally, we did not script any of this, so these guys don't even know what's coming next. But if you had maybe one more tip, if there's one thing you've either come across to kind of go, wow, that was kind of neat, or man, I wish I knew that 2 years ago, or I saw somebody doing something in this space that was kind of neat. Anything that comes to mind quickly, and Noah, we'll set up while I put them all on the spot, and you can see the sweat just dripping as they're thinking about it. Just one sort of thing you kind of go, wow, that's kind of a neat thing I saw a good tip I heard, or something kind of go, that was, I wish I would have known that 2 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, on my end, I think when we talk about technology, the key is don't be afraid of it and learn really how to accept it and how to integrate it into what you do. And it might not be complete integration, might not be done quickly. It might be something it's gradual, but it's really about not being afraid to embrace it. I mean, back in high school, I remember sitting there with the typewriter, and now the incremental productivity gains I've had by having a PC is huge. But again, you have to be able to open up and be able to adopt it and to allow it to embrace the technology and how it's changing not only yourself, but also your industry, our industry, profession.
I would just say, I think data can be a scary concept. And I would just say, if you're not starting to track data and metrics, start small, but start now, because that is, going to really empower you. And I would just say, just start small. Just start with some key metrics and build from there. I would start doing that earlier.
I'll reiterate something I said earlier. Find technology champions. And if that's a law firm to partner with you, to be one of your champions, if it's a CFO or CEO that is hungry for change, have him be or she be the technology champion. If it's a chief legal or an ops professional, be your champion. But it's imperative to find those champions, because that entire change management routine is difficult to go at alone. But if you have the right partners, it makes the journey much easier.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is now the smooth transition to our next Darwin talk. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. So Noah, he's the CEO of Kira, and one of our sort of darlings in the certainly in the Toronto community, and actually well beyond, obviously. So for anybody that isn't aware of Kira, it's a machine learning, particularly in the due diligence and sort of contract review space. And Noah will do obviously a much more poignant, sort of beautiful sort of description of sort of both, but what you're passionate about, what you're doing, and what's quite frankly sort of again sort of changing the legal landscape, and hopefully in the near term. So go ahead, Noah.
Excellent.
Hi. So I was worried that Matt was just going to take my whole talk and do it for me. But fortunately, I think he held off, and I'll still be safe. I'm Noah Weisberg. I'm the CEO and a co-founder of Kira Systems. And prior to this, I was an M&A lawyer at Watt Gottschall. I'm going to talk to you today about contract analysis software, which is something I know a lot about. Our company does it. And I think it's a useful thing for tech-savvy in-house counsel to know about. So that is why I'm going to go through this. With contract analysis software, you may be asking, what is contract analysis software, or why does this stuff even exist? There are a couple of situations when lawyers try to review contracts. One situation is the negotiation use case. You're negotiating an NDA, a vendor contract, a merger agreement, and you feel like knowing whether it's a good deal that you should sign up to or not. The other situation, and that's not what I'm going to talk about actually. What I'm going to talk about is the second situation, which is bulk data extraction. So there's lots of situations when lawyers need to go through heaps of contracts and pull information out of them. So a good example would be you're setting up Apttus, and you have a bunch of your contracts sitting in sort of paper form or maybe electronic form, but you don't have the actual details of what's in those contracts, like when did they start and end, and what's the pricing under them, and does the pricing increase at a certain point? And if you need to, or let alone what does it say about assignment or change of control or most favored customer, and if you need to get that details into a system like Apttus or Ariba or Antoris, you probably need to have someone review those contracts, or you need to have a piece of software go through and review those contracts. This also comes up if you're trying to understand due diligence around an acquisition, populate lease management system, or do something episodic, like the rules have changed in your specific area and you need to find out what all your contracts say about the London PM fix rate setting mechanism changing. So you need to find that information, you need to review a bunch of contracts, and that turns into a bulk data extraction exercise. That is going to be pretty high volume work, like you have to read all your contracts, or someone does, and pull the information out of them. But people are looking for the same information over and over again. There is now software like ours, but not just ours, that will help you pull information out of those contracts. Now you may ask, how is this even possible? Like, how might you go and find the most favored customer provisions in all your contracts? And there are 3 different ways that you might do that. First is through rules, right? So in the same way that you would have searched Westlaw perhaps and said, I would like to find all cases that have these 3 keywords within 10 words of each other, you can do the same thing and apply that to contracts. So you could say for assignment clauses, anytime I see the words assignment and agreement in the same sentence, I'd like to pull that out and I'll call it an assignment clause. That should work fine to the extent you know what you're looking for in advance and you know that the clauses are going to present a certain way. But a lot of the times, contracts are phrased differently, and that approach could get you into a lot of trouble. So just think about a confidentiality clause, for example. If I tried to do a word search for a confidentiality clause, I might come up with CONFI and some kind of stem on the end of that. And I'd be both over-inclusive and under-inclusive if I took that approach. So over-inclusive in the sense that you could have confidential on the top of every single page of a given contract, but also under-inclusive because there's lots of ways to phrase a confidentiality clause just referring to disclosure and not ever saying the word confidentiality. So maybe you build another rule for that and another rule for another situation and another rule for another situation, but in a lot of fields, people have found that rules are highly brittle and not a great way to get at stuff. Another thing you might do would be to stock a database with examples of confidentiality or assignment clauses and say that anything that is within 70% of one of these clauses is a true hit for assignment or confidentiality. That's also somewhat of an imperfect solution. It would be a fine solution as long as all the clauses that you're looking for are like the ones in your database, but where you can run into a lot of trouble is searching for unfamiliar information. And I should add that a lot of information can become unfamiliar just by virtue of the fact that maybe you're putting in poor quality scans. And when you put in poor quality scans, it may appear to a machine as though you're putting in sort of gibberish language. The third way to get at it, and the sort of what I would say is the better way to get at it, is through machine learning. So an example of how we use machine learning, we give our system heaps of examples of, say, assignment clauses. And our purpose-built algorithms crunch those together, figure out similarities and differences between those as well as language that's not used, and out pops a model that we then apply to new documents. Now, if you are thinking about contract analysis software systems, there's a few things that you should think about. First of all, how accurate is the system at all? And specifically, is it accurate on your documents? Like a vendor may say that the system is accurate, but you don't know really what they mean unless you look at your own documents and see how the system performs on them, because it's really easy to cheat a test if you're administering the test. The second thing is does it make an impact on time savings? So I think a lot of places that implement our system, including a bunch of good Toronto firms, not this one yet, but hopefully very soon, but like Torrey's, Osler, Davies, just sorry to do run through tests of their own and find that there can be pretty significant time savings from using a system like this, like anywhere from 20 to 60 or even 90% of the time that you would have otherwise spent reviewing contracts, you can save using a system like this with the same or greater accuracy. But it's something where you should test it out for yourselves and see. The optimal way to test is not necessarily to run the computer against people and see what happens, because obviously it'll be a lot faster, but actually to run people using a system like this against people not using a system and see how the results stack up. Third thing to think about is how adaptable is the system, or how closely does the system match your own workflow? And then a fourth is, does it find the information that you need to find? And if it doesn't, can you teach it yourself how to do so? There's going to be some questions around that, like how quickly does the system learn to find the information that you would like it to find, and how accurate does it get? So that is all.
So actually, I'll have a quick question, but so we actually, just to sort of support what you just talked about, we ran 3 systems. We just finished doing this actually a couple weeks ago. We ran 3 systems against each other. So first, actually, a testament to Noah and Kira. From an accuracy perspective, this is not actually machine against humans, which of course we know the machines are better. But this is machine against machine, different solutions in the market, and Kira came out as the most accurate, first of all. And then our data actually showed that when we include the full human time machine, like the full measure, and there was approximately 75% savings in aggregate cost of due diligence, which those are our numbers. I don't know how they match up with yours, but
that definitely lines up with
right.
what we've seen elsewhere.
Yeah. Quick question for Noah before I send him off. Yeah.
So I get this question about machine learning. So if software is doing kind of one of those typical things that we train first-year associates on for M&A work, right? There's I had to look through all of these contracts, and so now you do. How do we train? How do we train young associates if we're taking out one of these fundamental pieces of M&A training?
Well, so there's 2 parts to the answer to that question. The first is that I think, having used our software a lot, not as familiar with the other ones, obviously, but that it's actually a really good training experience. Like, what the software does is it's almost like a first year's first year, right? So it's presenting you with a bunch of information that's probably right, but not 100% right. So a junior associate needs to look at these things that a computer system thinks are, say, assignment or change of control or most favorite customer, and needs to think about whether they actually are. So instead of just reading 50 pages of contract to kind of come up with 3 sentences that could be a most favorite customer provision, they can very quickly look at the most favorite customer provision. But the second point is more broadly applicable, which is this is the way it's going to be, right? Like, it may take, maybe there are a couple firms that did this a few years ago, and there's going to be a couple firms that do this a few years from now, but this is the way it is, right? Like I mentioned, a bunch of firms in the Toronto market and the London market, firms like the Perchance, Freshfields, DLA, Adelshaw, a bunch of Ashurst, Mishcot. This is the way it is going to be. And so as a junior associate, the skill set that you should be trying to pick up is being able to understand where a system like this might make mistakes, where you can get better performance out of a system like this, because by the time you get to be a mid-level, that's what you're going to be doing. So learning the skill set of how to work with a piece of technology like ours, I think is the skill set that juniors should be using anyways. It's like being able to do research for you working at TR. How useful do you think it is being able to handle the card catalog in the library for finding a case? Probably not as useful as being a whiz at knowing how to use Westlaw Next.
Good. No, thanks, Noah. Appreciate it.
You should have just done my talk.
There we go. I'm looking at discount now. That's what I want. So the no, actually, I'm not really kidding. Actually, I'd like to have Peter come up. Peter's there we go, Peter. So Peter is now a couple things. He's probably our most polished speaker, which is why we put Peter at the end. As the Peter, as I think some of you know, has the podcast Building Next Law, and Peter also, and you can't, no, don't disrespect Peter, you can't hold this against him, can't hold against Ben and some of the others in the room, but he's actually a tax lawyer, and but he's actually quite an animated tax lawyer. So without further ado, and also by the way, he's at sort of counter tax lawyers, which is a very unique sort of perspective and approach to sort of the laws. So without further ado, go for it.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know how this is going to go. So yeah, my name is Peter Aprile, and lucky for you, I'm not here to talk about the latest tax court cases. And I was asked by Evolve Law to talk about the future of law in 10 minutes or less. And I guess I should have told somebody before I got up here, but I don't know what the future of law is going to be. So all I can share with you today is kind of our firm's journey, and hopefully that provides a little bit of a compass to somebody in the room. There was talk on the panel about the idea of this culture of efficiency, and without sounding boastful, and I'll probably say that a couple of times throughout my presentation, that's who I think we are, and we're just a law firm that does tries to do everything better every day. And in order to do that, what we do is we try to compile as much data as possible to set benchmarks for us and to figure out where we are and how we can get better in the things that we should be getting better at. And so we track as much stuff as we possibly can. So we'll track, we're tax litigators, so we track weird things like the average government response times and our ideal response time to that, as well as the historical averages around that. We track details surrounding every step and every task in our process, and we can do that because we've built over the course of 3 years 52 unique workflows, and we're in the process of mapping 2,000 document assembly templates on top of that. We track waste to the extent that we can, and the reason why I was asked to talk today was one of the things that we track and we publish is client return on investment. We also started tracking net promoter scores, competitor market share. We did not scrape the tax court website for that. We totally scraped the tax court website for that. And really hoped we didn't crash it. And we track our firm's ability to forecast accurately by each person in the firm. And so like I said, the reason why I was asked to talk today was because we tracked client ROI, and then we brought people in to verify our return on investment, or our client's return on investment, I should say. So the background on our firm, generally speaking, is this. 5 years ago, we just stripped everything away. And we really started to build a law firm that we would want if we were in our client's shoes. That isn't marketing speak. We just brought everything down and built processes that we would expect our law firm to have. And so we started with two ideas, return on investment, because we thought if we were clients, that's the only thing we would really care about. And we would want to have the ability to compare and hire lawyers based on that data, based on the historical return on investment that law firm could produce. And the second thing, which was mentioned as well today, was we focused in on garbage in, garbage out. So what we did is we knew that focusing on the quality of our inputs, so processes, technology, people, and culture, would hopefully increase the return on investment that we were generating for our clients. And I could talk for a really long time about our processes and the technology that we built. I've learned from talking to so many lawyers, nobody cares about that. There might be some in-house counsel that are really nerdy and interested in this at the end of this, but I'm not going to talk about that, and instead I'm going to tell you about how we started looking at our data in our practice and what led us to publishing client return on investment. So like most lawyers, we always really believed that we were really good at what we do, right? And so, but we never had any real basis for that. Like, we're really confident people, but where's the proof? We high-fived a lot and we seemed to win a lot, but where's the proof? And so we walked around and we told people, like, we're really good at this. And we tried to use different ways to show people that. Like, we wrote a lot and we talked and stuff like this. And we were really proud of our work. And when we were walking around bragging, we always made sure that we complied with the Law Society regulatory framework, right? And so we all know what that is. So we never suggested any qualitative superiority over other lawyers. We never raised expectations unjustifiably. We never suggested that we were aggressive or anything like that. We never disparaged any other law firms. We never took advantage of any people. And we didn't really use testimonials or endorsements in the wrong way. So we could have continued on that path. We could have continued to tell people we're the best and, in a way that didn't offend the rules. And we could have done what most law firms do. We could have produced like really fancy brochures in front of impressive-looking office towers telling everybody how awesome we were at our job. The problem with that is we think that does absolutely nothing to help our clients compare lawyers and understand return on investment. And the irony of this whole thing is we thought those brochures and those unsubstantiated claims actually supply the evidence that the law firms behind them are not, in fact, transparent, client-centric organizations, that their marketing departments are trying to claim that they are. And so since we didn't see any law firms publishing information or results, we started to look at third parties. And we found a couple companies that we really like, Premonition being one. So if you haven't heard about Premonition, there's a couple people here who will probably tell you about them. Generally speaking, data mining and analytics company that is scraping public court records to uncover lawyers that win the most specific cases in specific matters. And then there's also somebody who's here, Loom Analytics, who's a great company as well, and they're kind of gathering and releasing some of the similar information through its application. And when we looked at these two things come to mind. First, I have no doubt that more and more clients are going to continue to be interested in this information as soon as they start seeing that it's possible and third parties are providing it. And the second thing is the public records are so incomplete, right? And they're imperfect, and more information is needed to understand lawyer efficacy and return on investment. And so why is the public record imperfect? And anybody involved in litigation, either in-house or litigating, knows why. You know, most things settle. There isn't public data surrounding that. Litigation is nuanced, so in most cases it's not a binary result. It's not a win-loss type thing. Win percentage alone doesn't take into account legal fees and the other like real costs that are part of the decision-making process. And the last one, which is my favorite, you know, some lawyers avoid court to cultivate an image of success, right? And so, you know, taking hard cases is what we're supposed to be doing as litigators. And, you know, that win percentage that forms part of the public record doesn't speak to any of that. So what would help? And it's a lot of front-end, right? It's firms that are looking at the ability to accurately identify litigation outcomes and target outcomes from the outset, an analysis and comparison between the result and the target outcomes, and then the client return on investment. And so what's obvious to us, at least, is as soon as you start looking at the public record in that data set, that the only way to complete the data set is for law firms to step up and do it. And so that starts with some of the things that we were talking about today. It starts with law firms being willing or able to track it. Well, it's not able because we can all do it. And then publishing it in some form. And so, and Ian, I think, mentioned talking about like the baby steps. And that's essentially what we're doing here. These are just baby steps. So this is kind of the baby steps that we took. And we're still trying to figure out, as a law firm, what's possible, what's practical, and what's valuable. And I'm not here before you telling you that our efforts are perfect or complete or anything. Again, we view this completely as baby steps, and in part, I'm kind of embarrassed to be here talking about it. So if we go back to the completing the data set example, it appears at first glance tracking and publishing client return on investment is pretty straightforward. However, when you start to look at what constitutes an outcome or what makes up an outcome, things get really complicated really quickly. And comparing results gets even more complicated. And so what it requires is it requires the law firm to develop some system. And again, I'm not looking for perfect systems. Ours is far from it. But some system to establish target outcomes from the outset, and then develop an accurate system to measure the quality of that outcome. So as mentioned earlier, our first attempt, this was our first attempt of tracking and verifying and doing all this stuff. However, when we started, this is not what we ended. We didn't think that we were going to output this. We didn't think that at the beginning of this we were going to publish client return on investment. We just started tracking everything we possibly could. Some of the things that we collected and tracked were done through automation, and other things were, you know, setting up tasks for admin to just say, look, that's a piece of data we want. Every file that crosses your desk, you need to pull that and put that here. And so after a period of time, and I wish I could say to you, we did this, you know, we said, oh, on this date, we're going to pull all our data. But the reality is a Saturday, I was in the office with a couple other people, and I said, hey, let's pull it all and see what happens. And it, like, what we got was a disaster, right? Like, it was just not clean, and we had to do so much work in terms of cleaning it up. And so we spent at least the rest of that day doing that. And then I got really excited, and I said, let's take out all the sensitive information, and then let's just pile it into IBM Watson Analytics. And you start seeing connections between things that we never even considered before, and learning things about our practice that we really never knew, and confirming some things that we thought we knew. And truth be told, when you start seeing stuff like that, like, I didn't sleep that night. I was like, my poor wife. I was laying in bed just like eyes wide open at the possibilities that this little data set kind of produced for our little law firm. And so there was actually a comment earlier about the idea of like technology and does it require tech-savvy people and all this stuff. And I don't think it does. I really don't think we are technology people. And what I think it requires, what I know that it requires, is it requires a shift in mindset and the desire to do this, and this idea that all this data, Matt said this earlier as well, it's in all our law firms. And the idea of just leaving it there and letting it go to waste seems somehow irresponsible of all of us. So anyways, when we started looking at client return on investment, we started looking at 4 things. We started looking at proportion of favorable outcome, in our business, total tax penalties and interest saved, average percentage of the total amount in dispute, and the client return on investment, taking into account legal fees as well as deductibility of our legal fees. And so the numbers confirmed our hypothesis. And what we found out is, yeah, we're kind of good at this. But then we thought, like, who's ever going to believe us? Like, this is just, it feels like more marketing material. And so then what we did is we went out and we hired a mid-sized accounting firm. We hired a firm called Fuller Landau to come into our offices. So they put 3 accountants in our offices. And they went through all our data and confirmed that what we were reporting was accurate, and then produced an audit assurance report to confirm that as well. And then we published all of it. And that's what we did, and it's really that simple. And like I said, I don't know where the legal industry or the law is going. I can only tell you where our firm is pointing. And we're pointing towards collecting as much data as we can and supplying that to the people internally to help us do everything better, as well as to help our clients to think better, to ask us better questions, and to make better choices themselves. So there's 3 reasons why our firm will continue to point in this direction. And the first is we believe it's the best way to ensure that our firm will continue to improve. The second, because if we were clients, we would want to have access to the data and make informed decisions based on kind of real things. And the third is that we think law firms have a choice right now. And that choice is we can sit back and we can allow third parties to pull and publish what is essentially incomplete information, or we can act proactively and independently to verify, publish, and complete that data set and to tell our story. And so we believe that the proactive and complete route is the better route. So if you want to learn more about what we did and why, we published a small article on it, as well as our results and the assurance report. So you're welcome to go to our website and check it out. Great. Thanks.
It's a fantastic sort of testament to, I mean, we are seeing a bunch of data. I think firms need to be, to your point, Pierre, I agree with actually every single thing you said, other than I can take exception with, I think you can still do it from a nice building, but we can argue about that later over a beer. So thank you, Peter. And actually, Mary, who just came in about 4 minutes ago, is going to sum up her view of the evening and how
I wish I could tell you that I was on Twitter following it, but I flew Air Canada. The GoGo in-flight doesn't work. But I was happy to fly Air Canada because American decided not to fly me up here tonight. So thank you, Matthew, for pitching in and for doing this. And I will watch the video. I'm very excited to see it. And thank you for hosting. And thank you to Thomson Reuters for sponsoring. And I look forward to meeting all of you over some drinks and go check out the cool companies that are here. Thanks.
Thank you.